Hello, everyone. Can I just invite some of our friends sitting on the back to come join the conference table? We intend to do some activities together. It'll become slightly more easy. And those of you who were not with us in the morning session, this is track 2. This is project-based learning. My name is Akshal Agarwal, along with Vardhan. We are your track coaches, and we are looking at introducing a little bit more of what we talked about. You can't hear me? Mic's useless. What cannot be done. So I invite all those in the back to come join us. Feel free to occupy the inner chairs as well, because the activity that we'll do and we can do a little more collaboratively. And I just move on to introduce our first speaker, and I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Anju Chizor, who is the co-founder of Mahatma Gandhi International Schools. Dr. Anju, founder of Mahatma Gandhi International Schools, holds advanced degrees in education, linguistics, and literature from prestigious institutions, including King's College London. With over 25 years of experience, he has developed the Generated Resource Learning (GRL) pedagogy and contributed significantly to curriculum development with CBSE, NCERT, and GCRT. Dr. Chizor is an expert member of national committees on toy-based pedagogy and holistic progress cards, something which was introduced very recently. A published author and award-winning recipient, she is currently focused on integrating science and spirituality into school curricula for holistic student well-being and growth. Can we hear for our
From Ahmedabad, based there. I have a school there. Pascal and I created this 25 years ago. And much of what we did went into the NEP because for the simple reason that one of the main architects of NEP, Mrs. Anita Karwal, was one of the co-founders with me of our school. She's the one who signed on the papers when she was Deputy Municipal Commissioner. And then her children studied in my school. And then when we worked together on a lot of other projects when she was in Election Commission. And then, as luck would or destiny would have it, CBSE, and then her stint as Secretary Education. So I do see many of the things, many of our practices reflected. I was put on a lot of committees. I've been part of the National Focus Group. I've been part of the Innovative Pedagogies Group. I've been part of the Toy-Based Pedagogy and ultimately the Holistic Progress Card. The Holistic Progress Card is something that we have been doing since the last 25 years. So, self-reflection, peer-to-peer, all of this is coming from our school. So, something that I know very, very well. 2-3 things about our school. When we started off, one thing was that we didn't want to use textbooks because as a student, I hated them. I thought that they were terribly boring, and my experience of education was very either I was bored or I was fearful. And Pascal being French, it was very similar. And that's why we wanted a school where we are learning in ways that are enjoyable, but also that makes sense to me. There has to be a purpose to what I'm doing, and that's something very much at the heart of experiential learning, even with John Dewey, when we look at what he says. But the nature, the quality of experience is very important. Everybody's talking about experiential learning. But if you don't add the word joyful or meaningful, it doesn't make sense, because everything is an experience anyway. Getting bored is also an experience. So what we did was, we had projects right from kindergarten to grade 12. We went for the International Baccalaureate in those days because that time there was no NEP, there was no good framework. So what I'm going to show you now, first before we start, project-based learning is also something which is a gray area. Like, what's a project? If you stick things onto a chart paper, that's also becoming a project. So PBL also, like activity-based learning. What are we doing in an activity? In Kerala, many years back, there was a whole movement of activity-based learning, many years ago, and it failed. And nobody went into the reasons why did it fail, because the idea is good, right? That kids should rather be doing activities than be just rote learning. And the reason probably it failed, one of the reasons could be that these activities were not coherent, they were disjointed. You go outside, do something, enjoy, come back, open your textbook, start again. That's not how it works. So many of these things, these experiments didn't succeed. Now with project-based learning, the first thing is the etymology of the word. Project comes from the French projeter. And projeter means into the future. So projects are necessarily future-driven. That means there is a vision, there's a goal to reach somewhere. And in order to reach that, you have to have a series of steps. Otherwise, it's an activity. An activity is instantaneous. Chalo, utho, get up, let's do this. Okay, finished. But project is a larger thing. And the goal drives that purpose. That's what gives a direction and a momentum to it. It gives an energy to it. If you don't have that, it's boring and it won't take off. The other thing about projects is it should be linked to children's desires and interests. The context of the child. That's how you get it in. So how did we do? We did what you would call an emergent curriculum. Now with the NEP and the NCF, we know very well, it is very clearly said that the textbook is not, this is not textbook-centric learning anymore. You don't have, you can use a textbook, whatever are prescribed by NCERT, but you don't have to. It's more for schools that have no other means, rural schools. The textbooks are made for those schools where teachers have nothing and children have nothing to take back home. So the textbook becomes something they can take. But for schools who have other resources, we should use them. So the projects have to be something that are linked to the child's context. That means it has to be useful to the child, otherwise why should I do it? Why should I spend 14 years of my life sitting on hard-wooden benches and learning things which are of no use to me? The other thing about projects is that the real context. You see, schools have become gated communities. Kid goes into the school, gate closes, that's it. And then the buses come after the day is over and you go home. Our school is completely porous. Our gates are always open. Kids go in, they go out. Of course, they're accompanied. We know, and not the tiny ones, but the older ones. And they go out, they ask questions to people on the road, they take surveys, they collect data. So our textbook is actually the real data that children collect. They do surveys, they go ask questions, that data comes back, they analyze the data. So that is how the emergent curriculum is framed. To give you a couple of other examples, okay? We have filmmaking. So we started off just informally. Bacche camera leke kuch choti moti stories banayenge, then social issues, whatever. Then it became formal. We also have the BTEC, the Business and Technical Education Council of UK. One of the finest things you can do. It's a joy because it's so well framed, the BTEC courses. So we had filmmaking courses. So now the children are actually going out and not only making films, but they're bidding for tenders. So if the municipal corporation floats a tender for making films for, because of giving awareness for malaria or whatever, hum bhi bid kar dete hai tender. So they learn how to bid. Then they win it. Then they're interacting with the officials of municipal corporation to understand ke kis tarah se film banani, what is it. So I'm not saying we do it all the time, but time to time we have done really real projects and as much as possible with real people in real time. So that's the thing. Project-based learning means you're working with real people. It's not a simulation. This is not a lab thing. And real life is always very messy. You go out to ask 5 questions to somebody on the street, you're not sure how that person is going to respond. So you have to adapt. Real life means adaptation. Real life means real feedback, not from an authority figure. It's not the teacher saying right or wrong or whatever. It's actually coming from a real figure. So I'm going to show you a short film. One of the projects we do, so we've got a couple of projects also because they're transdisciplinary. Another thing in our school, we don't have subjects. Children do not know what concept subject kar rahe hain. They only know what projects they're doing. Within the project, different people come in and they do different things. So I might be able to do something more related to mathematical or logical competencies or to languages anyway, everywhere. So it's working in a way which is very, very organic. And the time, of course, is very important. If you want to bore the kids, 35 minutes is good. You just sit there, you give a lecture and go off. But if you want to do projects, then you have to have a good time frame. So we always have blocks of at least 2 hours in which you can take a short break. Many of the Nordic countries, in Norway and Finland, they also use time blocks. Norway, of course, we were there recently, it's public schools. All are they're public schools, they're not private schools. And they all have time blocks. And it works very well. Because then you go in depth. It's not like, okay, you're starting to learn something, then the bell rings and now you switch off. You can't go in depth. So these are the things which are really important. So we'll have a look now at the CAP project that we run throughout the classes from kindergarten to grade 11. And this is an older class.
When we begin a project, we get together as a team and we map the project, the whole cycle from the purpose to planning to creating the action, then the evaluation. The team of teachers also look at the different subject competencies that can be learned through this so that we can make a connection, draw the links. This mind map is a kind of initial representation. As a group, you are going to make one master chef dish. Okay, so you have to make something that is interesting, healthy, tasty. Within the budget given to you. That's it. Any questions? Okay. Step to 12. 1.5 hours. You can use the resources in the cafe. Go. In this MJS MasterChef, I was looking particularly at humanities. In IB we call it individual and societies. In that we have economics. So my goal, specific learning objective for this module, for this unit was to look at understanding economic terms, which are the foundation of economics, such as alternatives, choice, scarcity, resources, capital, demand, supply. And I wanted the children to make connections with real life experiences, which is very much our MJS pedagogy. So the goal was not to introduce the theory and the facts first, or knowledge of the subject first, but to help create an experience.
My word is consumer. Consumer was me in my case, and for everyone else's case.
The word I've learned is resources. So in Greek we use the word resource, but also resources such as space and time. So we have limited space and limited time. Also money is a resource. So a lot of resources were used in this task.
It's a kind of experiences along the way which they connect to and which leads to the larger concept that we are building. So when they come to grade 11 and 12 and they're actually studying economics, it's much easier for them to make connections to their past knowledge. This is like a little window into that world which was created and gets them all really excited.
Okay, so I hope that it was just a little glimpse, but could you make out a few things about what are the elements that you think you've picked up from that short film about related to project-based learning? What do you think? What do you see was happening there? Yes, ma'am.
Application of real life scenarios
Connecting to real life.
economics going on,
Yeah.
calculation, brainstorming, thinking.
Yeah.
And they were critically thinking that with this much amount, how can they make the best choice?
Yeah, that was a task given to them that just within this limited amount of 20 rupees, you have to make a healthy dish. So they've already done a lot of things before, of course. But the real thing was, yeah, it was real money. They had to really go outside and do things. Krishna, ma'am?
I also found that subject silos had been knocked off.
Yeah,
So that was very interesting.
yeah,
They had to find their own connect with different subjects.
yeah. So it wasn't like they're really studying specifically something. They were just having the experience. Yeah.
I guess it was leading to some destination kind of thing. Normally we also do projects in our school, but that would be just a survey. That doesn't lead to anything. Here it was leading to some
Yeah.
output.
Yeah, so there is an outcome. It could be a campaign, it could be any kind of outcome, but that outcome has to be tangible for the children because then that gives them that excitement to do. But when you said no silos, it is interesting to note that Anita, she's not really an economics teacher, she's actually the English teacher. I mean, by her field of expertise. And you can see that she's actually teaching basic economic terms because that's something we can all do. So, we teachers are also into silos. And the subjects become our identities. I'm an English teacher, I'm a maths teacher, and then everybody thinks, and we're in fact limited by our expertise. And moment you step into the other realm of teaching something else, what happens to you? You cease to be the expert, and therefore you become a learner. You step out, so then you are learning with the children. You begin to go back to those learning mechanisms because these are very different mechanisms. The moment you become a subject expert, you've killed it because you know it and the kids don't. So you're starting off at a very big advantage. And we've forgotten what it means like to learn actually. And in our school, we don't call them teachers, we call them initiators. This was a term we had to invent because we think that we initiate the group and then the group takes it over and carries it forward. So this no silos is also for teachers. We should try to be more than just one subject, at least a little more multidisciplinary or what I would call rather transdisciplinary. Okay, any other things in terms of skills, competencies? Social skills, working together. Exactly. Yes, so? Yes. Oh my God, so much of what you're saying, the dynamics of real life kicks in. Now you got to deal with things, right? You got to find solutions. When they're making food also, khana jal gaya. We ran short of it. 3-4 kids shouting, we didn't like the coffee today or whatever milkshake that they may have made. They have to negotiate. They have to think about. So, all these things, what are the subjects that they're learning? Now, through this short thing, what do you think they can learn through this? In terms of subject content, give me an idea. Language? Yeah. Yes. Then? Maths, lot of it. Life skills, but science, right? Because all the hygiene, nutrition, all of that, this is so important today, isn't it? Financial literacy. And the respect, yeah.
For cooking food,
Exactly. You see, today one of our biggest problems we're facing today is well-being. What are we eating today? What are we putting into our body? Genetically modified foods, sugar, corn syrup. That's why we're having so many diseases. If children begin, so what they do is they're reading the labels all the time. They're checking what is a MRP, they're learning, they know how, our 5th grade children know how to make a bill because they go outside, they have to. Then they have to know the difference between lari wala se lena hai or shop se lena hai, so what will be the difference accounting purpose ke liye, because we won't get a pakka bill from a lari wala. So, but how do we manage with that? There's so many things, and how to respectfully talk to the guy who's selling. That's important. Then honesty, we're talking about values. Values have to be lived. We all know that. It can't be a 40 minutes class or something. So anyway, I think we're all educators here. You can sense that. What I want to say is that a lot of questions are always as, okay, but end of this kya hoga? Will they really be able to compete for exams? Yes, they do. We've had batches and batches of children who've actually appeared for some very tough exams because the IB exams are pretty tough. And we have the IBCP now, we have other programs. We have children who go for NIOS also. An inclusive school. Some children prefer to do that and develop some skill. So what are the kind of children, now to wrap it up, what are the kind of students, what happens, what is the impact of project-based learning on students? For years we've been doing it, and when I was doing my doctorate, I did some assignments for interviewing some of the students. And we found that children found career paths or life paths thanks to the projects they did. That's what they said. That's what the data revealed. Though I was doing qualitative interviews. And I have one student who's a mentalist, the magician. So he can tell you your phone ka password aapko usi waqt bata dega on the stage. So that is, why did he do that? Because as a 10th grader, he did a personal project on magic, which he loved. Later on became a mentalist. Some students became musicians. You know that the film called Gehraiyan or something, Gehraiyan had come, and it became, the songs are very popular. All this composition and singers are all from our school. And they have said that in interviews after they were interviewed by The Guardian in UK and whatever, because they did very different music. And they said, we got it from school because we did a music project in school. It was a project, it's not. So again, there's a lot of, like you said, ma'am, agency. There's a student agency. Projects can actually go somewhere else. They don't always go where they're supposed to go. And that's the beauty of it, because real life takes you elsewhere. And that's what life, I think life ultimately is really knowing yourself. That's the hardest thing to do. And when they're doing these things, they become more self-aware because they're noting down. They come to know what they like doing and what they don't like doing. So that's also part of the advantage of project-based learning, because they know about their skills and they know what they need to develop and what they shouldn't be doing. So yes, that was just a little brief glimpse. I think, yes, I've done enough for the time, is it? Or have I run? Okay. So thank you very much, and I'm sure if there are questions later or something.
We will catch you back along with Simon for a few questions,
sure.
if that will be.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is Simon Jacob. He's the CEO and co-founder of Fuel. It's a differently spelled fuel, and I was trying to understand what that sounds like, but it is Fuel. He's a mechanical engineer. I am Alumnas, banker and ad agency founder. And he's worn many hats over the past 2 decades. And I think he was telling me the story last night about how during the pandemic he created a tool to allow his daughters to create video stories, and then his friends tried it out, and then he realized that, okay, this is really engaging and something that he would like to make a career out of. So that's Simon here to talk to you about how to use videos to fuel project-based learning.
Thanks, Vardhan. A very good afternoon to all of you. So what I'll do is I'll run you through something which just happened intuitively in my home, where I have 2 daughters. So I've been a teacher for 13 years. My older daughter is 13. So I don't have a B.Ed degree, but what I do have is a bachelor's in Gen Alpha, or a BGA degree is what I possess at this point of time. So what I've done is, over the years, I've taught a lot of things to my children. And in the pandemic, there were 8 kids on my floor. I stay in Bombay. And all 8 used to come to my place. And mine was the house where a lot of rules didn't exist. So they would come, have a lot of fun. And I taught them stop motion animation. They made a lot of animated videos. They taught each other waveboarding. And then they made a video of all of them waveboarding. And that's when it struck me that videos is such a powerful tool for children to express themselves. And what we ended up creating is project-based learning through video creation. So I'll just quickly play a couple of videos and elaborate on it.
Sphinx, as you can see, has a face of a human. When a honeybee sits on a flower for collecting nectar, this was the chemical reaction between vinegar and baking soda. And lithosphere forms the outer layer of Earth. Voila! Our delicious, berry blast is ready!
So what you see in these videos are, like ma'am said, there has to be a vision behind the project. So when I started working with schools, I realized that syllabus completion is a big challenge. Like she said, not all schools have time blocks of 2 hours, short periods. How do we kind of put it together? So what we focused on is a series of mini projects which can be done within a classroom environment, and then go for 2 capstone projects in a year. Due to paucity of time, I'm just going to show you some mini projects and we'll take it forward. So in a school, a setup like this happens, which is a video lab. So we built a platform which has a curriculum for video creation. It starts from grade 3. They learn a series of topics up to grade 9. You set up a simple thing, which is like a video lab, which consists of green screen, mobile phones, tripods, all of these, so that just like any other lab in school, children come here and they have a lot of fun. So my favorite period in school used to be PT or sports. And for me, when I started designing it, it had to be like a sports ground where children are having a lot of fun and in the process learning a lot of real life skills.
Today we will learn about germination of seeds.
So what you are seeing here is a simple setup which can be set up in any sort of a school. An overall setup is around 1.5 lakhs. The main cost is 5 mobile phones. So whether you take it from us or not is immaterial. We would encourage everyone to have some phones in school so that children start working together. So I'll show you a class how it works in action.
Now, let's just get silly with our voice. Go high, go low, go through all the vowels you know.
So there are 2 things here. So this is for right from grade 3 to grade 8. We use a lot of memes because that's something which is super relatable, it's something which they understand, and it's a lot of fun activities. So in a typical 40-minute period, I realized that we don't need to teach at all. So at max 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Children are quick, they grasp it, and what happens next is madness. So let's look at the next video. Voiceovers, where children are adding voice onto a video. And the reason we teach this is children watch all sorts of videos. My younger daughter watches YouTube Shorts. That's her predominant television at home. That's what she watches all the time. And therefore what we realized is they want to learn how these videos are made, what is done, so on and so forth. And we are able to apply it to relevant contexts as far as they are concerned. So one of our most popular voiceover projects is a cricket commentary clip. So what you are seeing is children doing a cricket commentary clip because they are learning how to speak in English and therefore they tend to mimic. So how it happens is they'll watch a clip of a commentator so that they get into the zone, and instead of us teaching them modulation, all of that, they do that. And then there is a reflection activity where you talk about what happened when the wicket fell down. So you spoke in a dictated voice. And that's like a quick summary of what happens in a class. Now the same thing when they go back home, we do projects at home. Again, simple Android phone is always required, which most parents have. And they end up doing projects which are mapped to curriculum. So now I'm just going to show you one of the options. So now everyone since morning in multiple sessions has talked about student agency, student choice, ma'am talked about it being relatable. Now that was my biggest takeaway as a parent who interacted with my children and what they were learning in school, that relatability was the biggest challenge. And therefore we said all the things which they love, let them then make it into projects. So I'm just going to run one example of a homework project which is animation. And these are schools where they are in rural areas and a combination of schools.
You look perfect.
Children have a creative mind, and what we've done is just facilitated that, given them tools which they experiment with. And since they watch so many videos, children learn very fast and they implement it in fun projects. And these projects is something which the teacher doesn't have to say why you've not submitted. It automatically happens because it is joyful for them. So now the last part. So the agency which I used to run used to be called The Bucket List, and our tagline was whatever it takes. That's what we believed in. So when I came into the education system, I'm a newbie. So I attended a lot of conferences. People would talk a lot that there's this policy, there is an NCF, there's an NEP. But whenever I would go to schools, I wouldn't see a lot of action happening apart from the premium set of schools which are in an event like these. So what we began to focus on is all these teachers who want to come with us, who want to move and make things happen. That's what we focused on. So I'll just leave you with one last video which has always core focus, which is to train the teachers, co-create projects. Because as a company, if I create projects, they are useless. But if a teacher feels that this is how I want to teach pollination, then our platform is available. Co-create with them, and this is how we train teachers.
Comes out from the monotony of the normal bookish teaching learning process. As a teacher, we are enjoying. When we are enjoying, we will make our students to enjoy.
Whatever we teach may not go into the students' mind, but once they have hands-on experience, they will have much knowledge about it.
I'll just leave you with one last question. How many of you know what is Skippity Toilet? Has anyone seen Skippity Toilet? So the reason I brought it up is this is what my kids watch. And this is the set of educators who don't understand what they watch. And that's what we do in these teacher training programs. We show them stuff. This is how a child thinks. And therefore, the context has to be very different. Just go and watch a Skibidi Toilet video and it'll be fun to realize this is how kids think. Thanks a lot. I hope you learned something from this session.
Project-based learning in a genuine manner. So that's a question I think we would often get asked, and how would you respond to that?
First of all, it's a competency-based syllabus, so you're free from just for doing textbook stuff. The policy and NCF itself encourage schools to actually use competencies. How do we do projects? I work with a lot of CBSE schools. I said, locate the learning which is already happening in your school. What's happening? A lot of schools are doing extracurricular activities, okay? You're going on a sports meet, doing a sports function, annual function, field trip. Field trip ka mapping kar lo, kitni competencies cover ho rahi hain. You're actually learning a lot of things that time. If you're doing sports, you can do so much of mathematics with sports. You know, we do geometry when we're doing basketball. Or so you do a running commentary in language when you're playing a game. So actually a lot of activities are happening in schools, but they are only extracurricular. They've never mapped that activity as a project. So I'm just saying, don't do anything extra. Start with what you're already doing, but just ensure that the learning is happening through that and not through the textbook in your classroom. Because teachers are doing two things. So that's my first thing. And the other thing the CBSE has included is bagless days, 10 bagless days. So 10 bagless days mein kafi kuch ho sakta hai. You know, you can already start off. So teachers, I would say, okay, those 10 days, don't bring any textbooks. Do a short module. It can be waste management for your school. It can be looking at electricity audit of the school. Go around, see, you know, what is the electricity leakage. You learn so many things, particularly the higher classes. That way, teachers get confident. Parents will start accepting, because that's also, I know it's an area that you have to convince. And kids will have fun. I think that's really important.
Thank you. Let me ask him one question and then I'll take your question. Simon, I think the insight that the kids love to create videos, I think is fantastic, and I completely agree with that. What I want to ask you is that, and you sort of mentioned it, what is it that your platform or tool does, which maybe kids can't just use or teachers just can't use? What are the ready-made software tools to do the same thing? Just trying to understand what is it unique, or what value do you add in that sense?
So a couple of things. What we've created is a curriculum tailor-made for children with things which they love and understand. So which means that if it's a reel which they watch, then they want to know how to make a reel quickly. All of it is available on YouTube. According to me, there's nothing in this world which is not available on YouTube. But what we've done is just mixed it up for them. So which means that if they're watching a video, it feels like it's for that age group. For the ages of 3 to 5, we've got a separate curriculum. Grade 6 to 9, we've got a separate curriculum. And we keep refreshing it quite a bit, because each time when we notice that this is what children are doing, then we'll quickly insert one more module. So that's on one aspect. The second is what our secret sauce is, which is work with schools who do not have an IB school kind of an exposure. So which means a traditional CBSE school, and ma'am's talked about it, there's a lot of documents available. But that last mile of how to make it happen on a checklist of a principal is 100 things. And therefore we focus on that aspect, which is work with them in a fashion which works in school. So therefore our workbooks, etc. have been tailor-made, keeping in mind a packed schedule so that the child does something at home. They write scripts at home. Mobile exposure is something which parents don't want, so therefore they'll write scripts at home. They come to classroom and they work together. Otherwise, this entire program can be done by your school. We are the one who make it happen at the last mile level.
Thanks. Go ahead.
You had so many people surrounding. Are these micro schools the norm for the future?
Look, when we started, we took a municipal school building, and it's actually a municipal school. That is, well, now an IB school or whatever. There are many other boards also. Personally, okay, we were two teachers who wanted to start a school, and we didn't have the means. And the corporation came forward and said, okay, if we give you a building, can you make this innovative, experiential pedagogy school, whatever? We said, yes, that's how the project started. But to answer your question, personally, I believe that if we want to go towards sustainable models of education, I don't have the money to put in, I don't know, whatever it may cost, 10 crores or more to put up a school, right? So we said, if we have the space and the building, can I do a distributed thing? Can the city become my resource? And that's what we did. So we took a municipal school building, but our kids go to, local libraries. They use the local parks. We don't have a park. We don't even have a playground. So we use other people's playgrounds. We go to the university. Sometimes there's something we have to pay or whatever. We do the heritage walk. So that's how they all learn about history and what. So the city is our textbook. So I believe that we have to go towards sustainable models of education. So if you got these tiny schools also within the city, which are close by, where it's porous, you can go in and out, it's great. Now, there are advantages when you have a big school outside of the city. That's also great because it's a whole ecosystem. Then you have to do a lot of things within because it's probably more difficult to go out. I personally love being in the city. It's crazy. You got marriage happening, to pura wo band chalega, and we have to stop talking and probably start dancing because Bollywood songs are going on. So we say, okay, we'll do that. But that's it. City life is so different. But it's very crazy, and kids have to learn to deal with that. So both, I'm not for or against any model, but I'm just saying, to me, the smallness had many advantages. It also had the advantage that we knew each other all the time. All the teachers know all the kids. I know which kid has an allergy to orange and which kid is. So, that smallness makes it very, very homely for the kids. And if the larger the structure, the more procedures you'll have to put in and the more rigid it becomes. For the principal to make any change, aapko timetable change karna, it has a huge repercussion on a large school. But in a small school, in the corridor, we'll decide, oh my God, there are these French musicians coming from Alliance Française tomorrow. Let's have them interact with the kids. Okay, out goes a regular thing. Let's get them into the classroom. Let's mix up those two classes. It's possible to do that at a smaller scale. So I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but that's my experience. We have maximum of 300 children. In that small, it's a municipal school, okay? It's in the heart of the city, so that's the size, also of the space.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Maybe documented how to scale this, and see the two devils switched like extremes.
Can I take a shot and then I'll give it to her? I understand what you're saying, and we're trying to, we're a large school, we're 2350 kids. We're trying to bring in, and we're IB, we're 2350, so we're trying to bring in micro schools within the larger school. So giving that flexibility within each of those grade levels or wings, to make as many changes. If you're that large, also you can have enough resources for a specific grade level to be able to make their own decisions and make many choices. So that's just one.
Yeah, I think that's also something that came to my mind. Can one create small things within a larger school so that, you have greater area of flexibility to take decisions and all that? But scaling up was always a very big question. A lot of people used to say, okay, you've done this, great, but then what about the rest, And I used to tell myself, even if I could make 10 other schools, what would that change? Because your only need is so much more. And I think it happened in its own way with destiny or whatever you may call it, because so much of it has now gone into the NEP. We did 20% children underprivileged in 1998 from the municipal corporation. We give them an IB education all the way through. RT happened in 2010. So they used to come and study our models. So I think in a very, Pascal loves to talk about quantum physics. So in a very quantum way, I believe that if you change one parameter, it's a wave. It changes something else, somewhere else. So it's never about the scale. And I had no answers, but it happened organically. So yeah, and it's so difficult because the idea for us was not to go around to change the system. I just said, we can only do what we can do and do it well enough. I didn't know about marketing or anything like that. And for many, many years, we were very unknown. And people would come and say, oh, theek hai, but we can't do it in our school. Like, this is all great, but my parents, my teachers are different. So it was always, everybody had a lot of questions, and nahi ho sakta. And I was telling some of you have been in my other presentations. And in 2014, Pascal and I lost our daughter, Tara, who was around 12 years old that time. She was our student also in our school. And that, well, as a experience of not only deep grief, but deep shock, deep bewilderment at what happened, catapulted us into another space of understanding about life after life and so many other things about intuition, the processes of intuition, and the purpose of life. At least today we can stand because Tara was such a happy child. And I began to think, you know what? Thank God this kid was not bugged with stupid homework and stupid formula to learn at the end of the day. I don't have that guilt on me. This kid was a happy kid. And therefore, it's my duty now to ensure that the fact that Tara was happy, there's so many other Taras in the world, they should also have the same chance. Simply a happy childhood, because any resilience in human life will come from two things. A secure, happy childhood. B, having a life purpose. And if you read, Viktor Frankl's Search for Meaning, that's what. How did people survive the concentration camps? How? We are so privileged looking. Even in my tragedy was nothing compared to probably what this. But the thing is, I think the resilience, the driving force. You're talking about a project. I talk about a life path. And when I tried to tell my supervisors in King's College in UK, nobody understood life path ka matlab kya. No, go to career goals. I'm saying, no, I'm not about career goals. I'm talking about the soul imprint, your life path. What is resonating with you? And in education, in a project, a kid can arrive at that. That I just love playing the guitar. Or I just managing people. Or I'm so good at talking and convincing people. If the kids, they understand that that's your calling, When you talk about vocational, and I'm going to end here now, vocational comes from vocare, the Latin vocare, which means a calling. And the calling is a higher calling, the soul's calling or God or whatever you may call it. Have we found our calling, or are we just following because mom said and dads and society said, engineer ban jao, ye karo, wo karo, But you're calling something else. I think that's the crux. If you find your calling, you're in sync with everything else.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, one more question. Last question for the day.
Navigate your PBL is a simple catch with a cup of tea. And the steps which you gave for the PBL, a cup of tea, which is chai, banana, and हम कहते हैं कि पानी डालो, चीनी डालो, दूध डालो, and chai बन गया. But you connect that simple cup of tea into those beautiful, beautiful 8 processes. My question to you is, since you do have that platform, we keep asking questions to everyone, every educator, that please do PBL, and we keep saying that the curriculum should be framed. But these 8 steps are getting actually missed out on the ground level, and we are losing that essence of the PBL. We are not able to work out on those integrities which you had actually framed that 8 steps which can resonate with the feedback, the reflection part which NAP is talking now. I'm sure that draft format was available. So can you just help us, all the educators out here, not to miss out on those 8 steps when we are doing the PBL? So the technical part, I'm sorry, because we keep talking about assessments. Yeah. It is a superficial word which we are using and a flowery word which we have given outcome, but we are missing out on this core thing. This is the core thing of a PBL.
It's because it's a
process. It's a core thing. It's a process. If it is not a project.
Absolutely. And in project-based learning, it's a process. It's a journey.
The journey is the learning.
The journey is the learning. And it's not about how good your outcome is going to be. So now, to answer your question, hopefully in a short time from now, Mrs. Anita Karwal is back in Gujarat now after her stint as education. And she knows the NEP as well, probably better than any one of us. And so she and I are creating a podcast for this, and hopefully some basic training sessions to implement for the implementation part, So we're coming up with something in the coming few months very soon, and hopefully that should give a lot of practical tips and solutions. Of course, inviting other people, guests, talking, and creating some sessions, some training modules also for the practice part. and I'm hoping it should be off soon. Yeah, thank you.
Simon would like to add. So we work with around 100 schools, and what I have noticed is that the principal is very busy because she has to do 100 things in a school. And what we realized is having a PBL champion in school is the secret sauce. So that video which I showed you, what we look at intently, who's the teacher who's getting super excited, and then we note down their names, and then we go to the principal and say, can you make her the champion? After that, the things get done, because then we have an SOP which we train that one teacher to follow, and she ensures that 3 more teachers follow it, 4 more teachers follow it. Then it's the culture of the school, that the school then begins to believe that there is impact being created. Like that video on Janmashtami, that school, there's a lot of backlash from parents, and once this child and the coordinator created one video, in the PTM, all parents said now children are looking forward to similar things. So that's how I feel it will happen over a period of time. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's what she started off with saying as well. And I think what you bring out is a real problem. And I think that we've heard, our experts talk about it. So thank you for being here, Anju ma'am and Simon. We want to give them those.
So firstly, thank you. I promised you a kindergarten session in the morning where all of you will be doing a project yourself. That's what we'll try to do. So I will invite you to come, take the seats closer so that we can all do that project with our hands. We'll try to create a project in 25 minutes and put all of what we've been hearing to practice. It's not an easy task, but let's go about it. So I would just encourage you to sit together in smaller clusters. It'll be easier. Group of 4 is fine. Group of 4 is fine if you can make small groups of 4, and we'll get you your project kits to you. So if everyone can just come close, you'll all get one project kit like this for yourself for this session.